Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Conversations on Groong episode. Today, we're going to be focusing on the recent regime change operation in Syria and its implications for the region, as well as how these developments project into the South Caucasus, given Turkey and Azerbaijan's ambitions in Armenia. We'll also delve into the critical role of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, known as ISR in modern warfare, and explore how these capabilities have influenced conflicts like the 2020 war on Karabakh. Our guest today is Larry C. Johnson, a former CIA analyst and State Department counterterrorism officer specializing in terrorism, national security, and foreign policy. Now a political consultant and commentator, he is known for his critical views on U.S. foreign policy and intelligence practices.
Folks, this promises to be a fascinating discussion, so stay tuned. But before we begin, a quick reminder, if you enjoy deep dive coverage of Armenia, the South Caucasus, and the region, please hit the subscribe button. We're the only comprehensive English language podcast focused on Armenia and the region, bringing you long-form interviews such as this one with experts across a variety of fields. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then drop us a comment. We'd love to read your feedback, so please continue the dialogue in the comment section.
And lastly, if you enjoy this podcast, please consider supporting us. Your help will make it easier for us to produce quality content. Visit podcast.groong.org/donate for details. All right, let's get on with our show now. Mr. Larry Johnson, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show, Mr. Johnson.
Great to have you.
The invite.
Mr. Johnson, you are frequently featured on a variety of platforms, especially on YouTube. You give a lot of interviews, but for those who may not be familiar with your story, can you share a little bit about your background for our audience?
Sure. You could say my entire life has been, I'm a guy who can't hold a job. So I spent 4 years with the Central Intelligence Agency from 85 to 89. Where I did both work on the operations side of the house, but most of my career was with the intelligence analysis side. I moved from there to State Department. So when I was at CIA, I had State Department cover. That was my cover identity. Then I became real state and worked in the office of the coordinator for counterterrorism for 4 years. And then starting in 1994, began a consulting business. And that has continued until today. Several different iterations, but two of the main things I focused on during that time was scripting terrorism exercises for the U.S. military special operations world. And I did that for about 23 years. So I worked with every top secret classified military unit that there is, and got some knowledge about the world and how the United States operates in it in terms of intelligence collection and ISR in particular, as well as my other part of the consulting business was we did international financial investigations, money laundering cases. And one of our clients was the European Union when we brought a civil racketeering case against the tobacco companies for money laundering. Philip Morris settled with the European Union for in 2004, I believe it was, for $1.5 billion, which sounds like a lot of money. I mean, it'd be a lot
Maybe
of money.
Back then.
Yeah, but that's about a week of cash flow for Philip Morris. So, it didn't cause any lasting harm to him. And, what I learned out of that was a lot of U.S. corporations, U.S. banks, they are up to their eyebrows in dealing with drug money. Drug money is a lucrative endeavor. So it tends, that's why I say follow the money, because when you follow the money, you usually find out what's going on.
Thank you for that. So Syria happened. The terrorists are now forming a government in Syria. So let's just cut to the chase. Do you think that Russian and Iranian intel services missed this whole thing, or do you think that there were backroom deals maybe that determined the current outcome?
No, I don't think they missed it at all. I think they knew what was coming. They just couldn't, you see a car wreck getting ready to happen, and all you can do is watch it take place. Multiple reports now that both Iran and Russia made several entreaties to Bashar Assad about providing support, additional support, to the military, about increased training and increased financial aid. And Assad turned it all down. This coincided with the Arab League bringing recognition back to Assad. And so he basically was in their good graces. And I don't know if he was deceived by them, completely bamboozled, but whatever was done, and maybe he was paid off too. That's always a possibility. I think, all of this has been done for the sake of Israel. I mean, Turkey, Turkey's getting what it wants in terms of regaining territory that I believe was taken away from it at the end of World War I, 100 plus years ago. But the current drive, the intelligence operations are all centered around securing Israel's, I guess making Israel more secure is the proper way to present it. Nobody expected. I don't even think the CIA, the operations planners on the intel side expected this thing to coalesce and fall apart for Assad as quickly as it did, but it did. There's a lot of projection. I keep hearing these people. Oh boy, this hurt Russia. Really? Okay, explain to me how it hurt Russia.
Yeah, it's tough to understand because Russia still has that naval base in Tartus, and it projects a lot of power in the Mediterranean and the North African continent from there. And they've already had an agreement with HTS.
Yeah, but not that much in terms of, again, I think people really overstate the importance of Tartus because it's, Russia is not a naval power. It's not a maritime power. It has a very formidable submarine fleet for delivering nuclear weapons. But beyond that, it hasn't invested a lot of money in aircraft carriers. It's got some destroyers and cruisers here and there. But, for Russia, the real difference between Russia and the United States, when the United States gets involved with a country, we're going to overthrow it. We're going to install new rulers. We're going to, we break it, we buy it kind of thing. And yet we never really take responsibility for it. But we get ourselves completely meddled in. Russia doesn't. Russia actually operates on the principle, hey, it's your country. We're here to help. We'll help you if you want. But we're not going to tell you, we're not going to be your mother-in-law. We're not going to tell you what you have to do. We're not going to coerce you. We're not going to compel you. And if you don't want our help, that's fine too. And that's what happened. Russia was prepared to fight and assist Assad. Assad and his generals made the decision not to fight.
Right.
For
That seems
whatever
to be the case.
reason. This collaboration between Turkey and Israel, yeah, this is a temporary victory. I would say it's almost a Pyrrhic victory because now they own it. Last I checked, Syria is not on the border of Russia, and Syria is not on the border of Iran. And why does that matter? The refugees that are going to be flowing in and out, the criminal gangs that are going to be operating across those frontiers, the terrorist groups that are going to be moving back and forth, it's going to create chaos for all the countries that border Syria. So that means Turkey's going to have problems, Iraq's going to have problems, Jordan in particular is going to have some problems, Lebanon, big time, and even ultimately Israel. Israel thinks, oh yeah, they're destroying all of this Syrian military infrastructure, but they're also pushing out their lines of communication, and all of this presupposes that Israel has a pretty robust strategic depth in terms of its military resources, and it doesn't. It doesn't have a ample supply of manpower to call upon. It's got a very limited supply. And so now they're increasing territory that they're going to have to, quote, police, monitor. And despite the claims of Jelani, this current HTS, the Harat al-Sham head that, oh yeah, we don't want war with Israel. That's not going to last long. Yeah, there are too many jihadist members of HTS and al-Nusra and ISIS still active that are not going to sit by and watch Israel desecrate the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Just not going to happen. So, it's crazy.
As far as the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and their allies go, what was Turkey's role in this offensive?
They helped organize it and plan it through their MIT, through their intelligence organization, working in close cooperation with the United States, with the CIA, and with MI6. Uh, why do I say that? I don't, I'm not read into the program, but all I can tell you is when you see this Jelani show up on CNN and get this softball interview, and the whole thing, how stage managed it is, the woman wearing the head covering, and the guy, the only thing he didn't do was go on and say, "Hi, my name's Jelani. My pronouns are they, them." Didn't do that. Okay, he didn't come off as completely flamboyant, shall we say? But this then on top of it, when you say that we see that Ukrainian officers, Ukrainian military personnel, drone operators are operating in Turkey and in northern Syria. Well, Turkey didn't go to Ukraine and say, "Hey, Zelensky, can we borrow some of your boys? We're planning a little affair here." That was the United States and the United Kingdom polled people that they could trust and they had confidence in them and put them down there. So, yeah, this was Turkey was willingly going along with this. And let's be clear, this intelligence cooperation to take down Bashar al-Assad dates back at least 15 years, at least, if not longer. Well, in fact, you can go back to Dwight Eisenhower when he was trying to get rid of, I think, Hafez Assad back then. But so this is, the United States is for almost 70 years has been actively trying to get control of Syria. This is that proverbial dog chasing the car. Once you catch it, then what do you do?
Yeah. So, given all this, I mean, it's difficult to prognosticate, but how would you expect the situation in Syria to evolve in the coming months, years?
You don't see the Kurds laying down their weapons and turning to Turkey and saying, "Hey, let's be friends." That's not happening. They're fighting today as we speak, and the Turks, the groups backed by Turkey, are pushing the Kurds to the east, back across the Euphrates. So that's not a good sign.
Well, they're backed by the US. Does that mean that the US is probably going to end up staying there and then continuing this whole, it's kind of funny because, I mean, it's not funny, but it's the two NATO allies, the US and Turkey, who are
Right.
going to back different horses.
It's also
Yeah.
interesting because Trump in his first term wanted to get out of Syria. So, is he gonna stay there?
I think they will. I don't see them abandoning it. But we'll see what if Trump does. Goes back to what his policy was before. They could argue now. I think a real argument could be made that this region is going to be very volatile. Nobody's going to be in control. That's the problem. Erdogan thinks that, oh, okay, I've got this under control now. He doesn't. This is, he does not have the leverage. What he has created is a problem that he may have to actually send Turkish forces into Syria to intervene, to at least try to, get better control of Aleppo and Idlib, for example. But down south, where the Druze are, where you have more of a Shia population, they're going to be targets, as well as the Alawites. They're going to be targets of these Sunnis. A lot of people in the West just don't appreciate the depth of the sectarian intensity that is drives and motivates these people. Their religious beliefs don't allow for forgiveness or compromise. It's very rigid. It's very black and white. You're either a believer or you're a heretic. And the Jelani, they can try to put the best PR face on him. It's that old saying. I don't care how much lipstick you put on a pig, the pig still doesn't look like Marilyn Monroe. And Jelani, they're not going to be able to dress him up to make him appear to be Mahatma Gandhi. He's not a statesman. He's a 43-year-old guy who's spent much of the last 20 years chopping heads, killing people. And now all of a sudden he's going to be a statesman? I don't think so. And he's also does not have the experience to sort of navigate all these turbulent political waters, is the best way to describe it. But Turkey is genuinely a bad actor here. Erdogan is, talked, all he's done is talk about defending the rights of the Palestinian people. Now he's in bed with the Israelis.
Well, yeah, so far it's been all talk and no walk.
We keep joking that under the Erdogan administration earlier, like I guess more than a decade ago, his foreign minister had a book called Zero Problems with Neighbors, and now they have zero neighbors without problems.
Yeah.
But it seems like Erdogan seems to prefer to thrive under adversity, and so far it has worked out for him.
Right.
For instance, they have been able to capture Nagorno-Karabakh, which we'll talk about, which is one of our ancient parts of our homeland. And it seems like they've been exporting instability. I mean, it's still on their border, but it's not, at least inside Turkey, people haven't felt it, even though the lira is tanking and so forth.
Well, I don't pretend to be an expert on the whole Armenian experience. I do, know enough that Turkey seems to have been involved in a little genocide with respect to the Armenian people, and that tends to leave a scar. The one thing that separates people that come out of places like Armenia, Azerbaijan, Iran, they have long memories. And one of my CIA buddies, he was a case officer he was running Iranian intelligence assets. And one day he had a meeting scheduled, and this Iranian comes in, and he was visibly, emotionally distraught. He was upset. And my friend said to him, "Well, what's wrong?" He goes, "It was that murder of these women and children. It was ungodly. It was wrong." And my friend said, "Oh, I haven't heard about that." He said, he said, "How many?" And he said, "Oh, there were probably 3,000. 3,000. Good Lord. Where did it take place?" "No, it was right over here. There's this location." "Oh, okay. Now, when did this take place?" And the guy paused. He says, "I think it was 600 AD. Now, they're talking about it like it had just happened this week or last week. But it was something that had happened centuries ago.
Very long memory.
Unfortunately, it's very difficult because if you had said this in, let's say, 2019, when Nagorno-Karabakh, which is a ethnically Armenian populated region, was still Armenian, we would say, "Oh, these Armenians keep bringing up 100 years of history," and it happened again, and it's some of the same ideology. But since we're talking about the South Caucasus, it does remain a critical region where essentially global and regional powers intersect. And it's a pretty volatile environment. And so in 2020, Azerbaijan attacked Nagorno-Karabakh, and analysts warned of a potential escalation targeting the southern regions of Armenia now. So after that time, and Azerbaijan is openly threatening Armenia that it will take the so-called Zangezur corridor, it's the southern provinces of Armenia, Syunik and Vyosor, by force if it needs to. And their goal, according to their Pan-Turkic ideology, is to create the so-called Zangezur corridor, which would link, because essentially Armenia is sort of a geographically a wedge between Turkey and Azerbaijan. And in fact, former, I believe, Prime Minister of Turkey, Tansu Çiller, called us the damned wedged. But so from a Turkish perspective, from the pan-Turkic goal, establishing this corridor is pretty important. But also, this benefits several different powers. The United States, because it is able to contain Iran, it's able to put pressure on Iran from the north, and of course Israel, who is always ever present in these discussions. And we know that Azerbaijan and Turkey are adept at using global crises to initiate land grabs, just like they did in 2020 when they started that war amidst COVID and the US presidential election, and of course the current land grab that they did in Syria right now. And Armenian watchers are genuinely concerned that people are not paying attention. Maybe there's nothing we can do, and maybe the people will continue to say that, well, what could we do if Armenia does not protect itself? But the reality is that Armenia, unless Iran and Russia intervene to protect, north-south communication, and Armenia is basically on that route, then there's a good chance. I mean, many are worried, and I don't want to spread panic, but many are worried that Armenia will be the next place for operation. In fact, in the sphere of English language podcasters, I believe only Douglas McGregor was the one who brought up this issue in a recent podcast with Daniel Davis. But do you think that this adventure that Turkey started could embolden it to also now push for a territorial grab in Armenia?
No, actually, I think it'll probably end up being good news for Armenia because it will get Turkey so bogged down in Syria that it won't have the resources or the focus to be able to do that. In fact, I would almost argue that if they weren't bogged down in Syria, then that might be more of a possibility. Pashinyan he's the leader of Armenia right now, right?
Right. He's the prime minister.
Yeah, so he's playing a really dangerous game because the United States, the CIA is in there and they're sweet talking him. The best way to think of this is Pashinyan is like that woman at the bar that's had a little too much to drink. And the United States is this Lothario, the serial rapist, trying to get her out of the bar. Okay? If Armenians are foolish enough to believe that the United States government is their friend, and oh yeah, we're here to help you. We're here to promote your freedom and democracy. If they're dumb enough to believe that, then you know what? Maybe what happens, they deserve it. It's a hard way to say it, but the fact of the matter is the United States only wants to use Armenia for one reason, as a tool to attack Russia. This is all about taking Russia out because Russia's got the resources. Armenia's got some, but Armenia is a speck on the map compared to what Russia represents. And so the strategic vision for the United States, we normally don't do strategy well, but in this case, the strategy is to get in there, get Armenia as a way to distract, to try to weaken Russia, and they could give a shit what happens to Armenians. I mean, I hate to be so blunt about it and so crude, but I'm at the point now where I am just becoming enraged day after day. It is an unrelenting attack by the United States on the world order. We see it in Georgia, we see it in Romania, and we're seeing it in Armenia. And unfortunately, Pashinyan I think he's been completely gamed.
You may know how this is being done since you've been on that side of the world. We asked our previous guest, Ivan Kachanovsky, about the personal motivations for Zelensky. Like, how do you get someone who is a leader of a country to act against his country's interests in such a blatant manner that everyone else can see that what's happening? But
well, many people, many observers in Armenia actually think that these people are CIA assets, basically, who got installed at the top.
Yeah, very well could be.
Plain and simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add that, like, in the last 20 or so years, I don't know if there's ever been a case of the head of the CIA and MI6 visiting Armenia, and over the last 2 years, they have each visited Armenia at least once.
Yeah.
I think the head of MI6 visited Armenia. Richard Moore visited Armenia twice. So, and when they come to Armenia, they directly meet Pashinyan. They
With
don't meet their
Pashinyan.
counterpart in Armenia. They meet
Yeah.
Pashinyan directly.
Uh, that tells you, look, they didn't come to, provide volunteer hours at a soup kitchen. Hey, would you like another bowl of, borscht or whatever? Uh, no, that's, they are engaged. Armenia is simply a springboard to go after Russia. That's all. It'd be one thing if there was actually genuine concern about the Armenian people. And one of the aspects of CIA tradecraft and British, all spy tradecraft, is when you are trying to recruit somebody to betray their country, to give you information. It's much like a seduction, and at the heart of it, you are trying to convince the other person that you really are their friend, that you really have their best interest at heart, but you don't. That your best interest goes as long as they do what you want them to do. And the moment they start saying, "Wait a minute, I'm not comfortable with this," all of a sudden they wind up on the wrong side of the table.
Hmm.
And frankly, the world stage is littered with the bodies of people that thought that they were the buddies of the CIA. Ever heard of a guy named Saddam Hussein? How about Manuel Noriega? So where the United States would get in bed and make, we would have good relations with these people. We would facilitate their criminal activity, or what we called their criminal activity. And then when it becomes convenient for us, we turn on them. So but it's not just for like one person like Pashinyan. That happened to the whole Armenian population there. And and I would argue that Russia takes a very radically different approach, much more pragmatic in terms of understanding, hey, these guys are our neighbors. And, the fact that Armenia and Azerbaijan both, side by side, Russia's going to try to have good relations with both. But, it's like one of those situations, you go back to high school. Well, if you're going to be friends with him, you can't be friends with me. Wait a second. There has to be a little more maturity enter into this. So it's dangerous, what's taking place.
It's a very opportune, I mean, apt that you mentioned that, because Iran is keenly aware of the pan-Turanic threat, but also the sort of Israeli threat on its northern borders. Maybe for Iran, I don't know which one is more important. Meanwhile, Russia is a little bit, as you said, more pragmatic. And
Yeah.
by that, I mean, in November 9, 2020, when the war, there was a ceasefire that was inked on November 9, 2020. One point that appeared in that ceasefire document was this so-called opening of trade routes. And under the guise of opening trade routes, there's explicit mention of connecting the mainland Azerbaijan with its exclave of Nakhichevan. And that's what the Turks are calling the Zangezur corridor. They, in fact, ceremoniously went to Shushi, the Armenian city of Shushi, that is on, one of the highest points in the region, and they inked the Shushi Declaration, where they said that Turkey and Azerbaijan will jointly sort of open the Zangezur corridor. So one of the points in that deal was that Russian border guard troops would be stationed on that corridor. But Turkey and Azerbaijan are treating this as their own, like, centuries-old project, and they are interpreting it as a extraterritorial corridor to Armenia. So they're trying to weaken this the geopolitical status of that region. And I'm not sure if Azerbaijan and Turkey make another land grab. I mean, amidst all this, and it doesn't have to be too complicated, because it's only, I believe, at its narrowest point, it's like 40 kilometers or something like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if even Russia would be willing to react. And at this point, given what happened in Syria, I'm not sure that Iran would be able to react. Shouldn't Russia be more concerned, though, about since you're an expert in counterterrorism, shouldn't Russia be more concerned about the Pan-Turkic threat because it has its own like soft underbelly, Chechnya and Dagestan, where these irredentist feelings can be cultivated in the future.
Well, yeah, no, it's one of those things that Russia is having to carefully navigate. Turkey, um, Erdogan is overplaying his hand, and that shouldn't surprise anybody. But you saw a statement, was it yesterday, day before yesterday, where he claimed that sort of the only two real global leaders are Vladimir Putin and ta-da, Erdogan.
It's
And
quite modest,
oh,
humble.
yeah, man of great humility, absolutely. You know, uh, and you got to see, wonder if Xi Jinping sitting there going, "What the hell?" Because Xi Jinping's also seen pictures of these Islamic Uyghur fighters there in Syria, and they're talking about going back and attacking China. So yes, the Chinese are always usually about business, but I think this is ultimately going to catch their attention. Um, Russia is, you know, Turkey has used up its credit with Russia. Let me put it that way.
That's an important
And
point.
and Russia harbors no illusions about what Erdogan is, that the ultimate self-serving bastard. That it won't even matter if it's necessarily in the best interest of Turkey or not, as long as it serves his vainglorious objectives, he'll do it. And that's why he's betrayed Russia over and over, and the promise to keep the Azov captives in tow and then releasing them, a year and a half ago, is just one example. Collaborating with Ukraine and with Western intelligence to bring in Ukrainian fighters that were going into Syria. So Russia, I think, understands the score on that. So they will. Again, I think your concerns are valid, but there is sort of, let's look at the bright side here of Turkey getting itself embroiled militarily in Syria. This is going to create a major distraction and major complications. Because as you point out right now, you've got the Kurdish forces backed by the United States, the rebel forces backed by Turkey. They're fighting. If the United States decides to military intervene, what does Turkey do? And not that there'd be any great U.S. military, but I'm just saying this is not going to bring peace and harmony. It's going to create turmoil and chaos. And when you got turmoil and chaos, the last thing you want to do is go provoke more by seizing territory in a place like Armenia. Of course, now let's be candid about it. If Pashinyan continues to basically tell the Russians, "Hey, go pound sand," we're not a member of the CSTO anymore. That organization sucks. That's basically what he said the other day. I can see Russia standing back and saying, "Oh, Azerbaijan and Turkey, hey, you want to take that chunk of land? That's no sweat off our nose."
Right.
Why would they want to intervene on behalf of Armenia in that situation when the current Armenian leader is cozying up to the West, and what Russian intelligence is telling them is the West is determined to cause as much terrorism, chaos, and disruption in Russia as possible because they want to destroy Russia.
Larry, I'm interested in your contrarian view that with Syria, Turkey may be bogged down in that embroilment and not think so much about Armenia and their Zangezur corridor. But it seems to me that instead of committing a lot of Turkish troops, Erdogan is renting all these mercenaries because there have been some Uyghurs and Turkomans and other people who've been
right.
found. So rather than Syrians fighting for their own independence, he's got all these mercenaries fighting in Syria. Some of
Right.
them, I think I read, have been found with Turkish liras because they get paid in Turkish liras in their
Right.
pockets. Is this going to be an MO going forward? Because obviously the same thing happened in Nagorno-Karabakh in 2020. There were a lot of I think it was the same thing. Turkmen and Syrian, they said mercenaries fighting on the side of the Azerbaijanis. Initially, thousands of those people died on the hills of Karabakh until, Azerbaijani troops led by Turkish generals started taking over. So is this going to be an MO in the 21st century that we have all these rented people who are building their own military capabilities and eventually turn on China or something?
Well, let's not exaggerate their military capabilities. They're
Hmm.
capable of creating a lot of chaos, but they are fairly easy to defeat with conventional military force.
There's an unlimited number of them.
No, there's a limited. I would say there's a limited number because, I've run across a couple of these guys. I testified in a court case against one, 20 years ago. He decided, I want to get my jihad on. So he went and he joined Al-Qaeda. And then they were getting him up in the middle of the night to do prayers. And then they had to get up at like 5 a.m. to go exercise. And then they got this paltry little breakfast at like 7 a.m. And then it was back to prayer. And then it was just, he lasted about a week. And he goes, oh, I hate this. you know, there's too much pain, too much suffering. Um, but the problem is you got this force, but there is the population there in Syria. Okay, they've not been raptured. God didn't take them up into the heavens. They're there. They're going to need to eat. They're going to need medical care. And if they don't get that, they're going to go someplace where they can get it. So if it's not being provided, if these guerrilla fighters who are not predisposed to actually govern territory and provide for people's needs, those people have to go elsewhere. Where are they going to go? Well, Turkey. Turkey's already got a huge Syrian refugee problem. They're trying to get rid of them, not bring more in. So all of a sudden, Turkey's going to be confronted with what do we do to install or try to get some sort of governing force in place in Syria that will start improving the lives of the people, making sure that food flows. They're still operating under Western sanctions, which are preventing a lot of aid. So that's what I'm saying. That's where this gets complicated. It's not just a matter of signing up some mercenaries and saying, "Go sick them, go get them, boys." Yeah, they can do that, but it doesn't mean that they're automatically going to triumph over the Shias. This notion that, oh boy, Iran's lost, poor Iran, they're out of the. It's like, has anybody ever wandered around those desert areas out there? It's centuries old smuggling routes. I mean, nobody in centuries has controlled those. So, and the notion that there's nobody, that all the border guards like in Jordan are incorruptible. I mean, they're stand-up guys who will never take a bribe. Oh, please. So that's what I'm saying. Iran's not going to sit back and wait to get punched in the nose. In fact, if nothing else, right now, I think Iran is probably taking steps to build a nuclear weapon right now, and will unveil it with maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, because they recognize that if they have a nuke, then Israel and the United States are not going to mess with them. It's always, if they don't have it, we're going to come get you. We're going to attack you. We're going to destroy you so that you can't get it. I mean, the logic of this is off the charts, but that's why I say this. Turkey it's not finding a situation where everything is falling into place and the local population is going, oh, thank God the Turks have come. Let's be calm. No, the purges, the murders, the mass executions, that's going to increase. And when that starts happening, the refugees, man, people start moving.
And to underscore your point, I think Iran has accelerated its enrichment program right now.
Let's talk ISR for a little bit,
Mhm.
Larry. In modern warfare, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance is cornerstone, I think, for achieving strategic and tactical dominance on the battlefield. In a 2023 article on your website, Sonar 21, you in fact liken ISR to the Eye of Sauron, which is interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
It rhymes, but
yeah,
and I being from a tech sector, like I know how how much progress there is even in a duration of a year or 2 years in terms of
right.
artificial intelligence, computer vision, all of that being used to comb over petabytes of data every day. But just to underscore this, or just to sort of maybe get your thoughts, how critical is ISR in determining the outcome of conflicts nowadays? And can you give examples of recent wars where maybe ISR played a decisive role?
Well, let's talk about how ISR has changed over the last, last 24 years, quarter of a century. Good God, how did I get that old? It seemed like yesterday I was sitting there working on this military exercises. So, and here I'm talking about the special operations community, what they use. Uh, there would be a KC-135 rivet joint. There would be um, other uh, other planes, collection platforms, but mostly it was fixed wing collection and or satellite. And when that data was collected, there was always a time lag because it had to come in and then get processed and maybe analyzed before it could be given to a commander for, say, a decision on the battlefield. I remember when, gosh, well, it was about March of 2003 when they first started getting um, regular drone feeds. So the drones, the CIA had the drones active in 2000, 2001, but it was considered a top secret program at the time. And then they began showing this capability to take live video and feed it back to headquarters. And I mean, then one of my CIA buddies at the time was laughing, because right after 9/11, they were tracking what they said were some al-Qaeda suspects driving down the road in the truck, and the next thing you know, this truck stops. The two guys get out of the truck and start having sex. Okay, and they're filming. CIA is recording this, just hooting and hollering at it. But you couple that with then the ability to do video conferencing, secure video conferencing. And all of a sudden, by 2006, you were getting regular drone video footage of a particular area. So you get that immediate information. And yeah, it could be analyzed, but you also had people seeing it real time, able to make real world decisions about targeting. What we've seen over the last 2.5 years, going on 3 years now in Ukraine, was this the drone warfare has become so fully integrated with the ISR that it's real time now. There is across the board, it's fast in ways that some people just don't understand. So it's changed the entire picture of how the military activity is being carried out. Now, does that mean everybody has the best intelligence? When you target and when you focus it on a target, yes, you're going to get good information. But for example, right now, I would argue Israel, for example, has very poor information about Iran and its actual capabilities. And I hear a lot of comments in the West about how weak Iran is. And I disagree. I think Iran is much stronger militarily than they're letting on. And there is this tendency in the West to confuse patience with weakness. And somebody that's not a hothead and is cautious and taking their time and making a decision, can oftentimes be viewed as weak when they're anything but. So the role that ISR has played, and you sort of alluded to it, you're getting so much information now. How do you sort out what's important from what's not important? How do you parse through that?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where, these are always guided by what are called collection plans, that the intelligence community comes up and says, okay, this is what we want to focus on. One of the problems with the collection plan is you say, hey, we're looking for this red Corvette. Okay, so get all the choppers up, get all the drones up. We need to go over the freeways and find the red Corvette. Well, you find out later that the report was it was a blue Volkswagen. And so you're looking for this red Corvette, and you're ignoring the blue Volkswagens everywhere. But you're focused. You're looking only for the red Corvette. You're not paying attention to the blue Volkswagen. So later, oh my God, that was important. We should have paid attention to that. So that's one of the biases and risks that come with this.
So there's also something that within NATO that interested me. They have joint ISR, and I'm just wondering how NATO countries share and collaborate on this, because I could imagine, for instance, that the US has pretty powerful capabilities that are always on. They always know, well, probably not as powerful as you allude, I guess. I mean, you tempered my my expectations a little bit, but I would say that they still have some pretty significant capability.
Yeah.
And how is that information shared between NATO countries? Like, for instance, does Turkey, as a member, get access to a part of that information? And if so, what part?
Well, I would say it really depends on the collection platform that's used. So there will be different ways of collecting intelligence, and some of those will be classified at the secret level. Some would be classified as top secret. Some will be classified as top secret special access program, a SAP, that it's in a compartment. So you're limited what you could share out of that. We saw examples of that recently. Remember when the 2 documents were leaked about the Israel's preparations for retaliation on Iran, and one of the documents in particular, it was classified top secret, SPCAT, but it was also Five Eyes. So you had lots of different classifications attached to it. And then as you read down, you would see paragraphs would be classified. One would be top secret, one would be secret, one would be top secret, Five Eyes, one would be top secret, US and British only. So what happens is, depending upon the kind of platform used to collect the information, and then that will determine who gets to see it. Are they cleared for it or not? And invariably, the United States has collection capabilities that they do not share with other foreign governments. They'll use different code letters to symbolize some of those methods.
And that includes within NATO, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So NATO doesn't, what I would see at the CIA, the average person in NATO wouldn't see, when I had my active clearances. So it's just, they will, a lot of times, if the intelligence is classified as no foreign, that means you can't share it with any foreigner. You'll see the other term, ORCON, means originator controlled. So whoever produced that intelligence, the one who's going to control access to it. And if it's like CIA generated information, well, they're going to tell foreigners, screw you, we're never sharing that with you.
So when something is classified, let's say need to know, and somebody like Turkey has access to some of this data inside NATO, does that also cover what they can share going forward?
I'm
We're
not sure I
we're trying to understand, for example, how much access Turkey had to information that is available to NATO members, and whether they leveraged those assets, that information, to help Azerbaijan in its war against Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia in
Oh, yeah.
2020. Because, you know, uh, even during the first hour, Azerbaijan had the kind of information it needed to destroy a lot of the air defenses available to Armenia. And there's no way that Azerbaijan has that kind of information on its own. Turkey, maybe, but then we certainly know that NATO has that capability.
Yeah, no, in that case, yeah, I would not at all doubt that if Turkey had access to intelligence like that, that it could pass it on to Azerbaijan. Absolutely. I understand too, there are long-standing relationships between Turkish intelligence, I guess it's called MIT,
Mhm.
and U.S. intelligence, CIA. That liaison, it's called liaison reporting. In many aspects, Turkey actually can have more leverage because the United States has sort of fallen short of collecting human assets and has become more dependent on liaison reporting. What liaison reporting is, you get a relationship with an intelligence service like Turkey's, and then they give you all of their good intelligence, pass it to you, and then you republish it and say, "Oh, this is what's going on in Turkey because we got it from our Turkish colleagues." So yeah, I think the scenario you lay out is very highly likely.
Does that imply that there was some sort of tacit approval, or even, I mean, tacit approval from NATO for Turkey to proceed with that, because it was something maybe the United States wanted to see? Because we've also heard firsthand from our colleagues that State Department types were actually looking around the Armenian diaspora members to understand how the diaspora would uh, react to a depopulation of Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, a few months later. So putting these things together, we're wondering, was this a NATO-led or NATO-tolerated activity on the part of Turkey to assist Azerbaijan in the ethnic cleansing?
But yeah, no, it certainly looks that way. I have no particular knowledge on that,
Hmm.
but the case you lay out is quite credible. That yes, that's exactly how it could have happened. Uh, it's also possible that it was missed, um, but um, a lot depends on what was coming in from the U.S. Embassy uh, in Yerevan, what was coming from the CIA chief of station.
Hmm.
Because they're reporting back. They've also got their assets and they've got their priorities of what they're supposed to collect on, what they're supposed to do. And so to that extent, and as well as, carrying out covert activities, covert operations.
So in the 2020 war, I mean, everyone could see it coming. It was the sort of thing that everyone knew was going to happen. It was just the day that it was going to happen.
Right.
And for Armenian analysts, everyone agrees that the biggest determinant and the reason why you didn't want to go to this war at any cost was because Turkey was going to be involved. And if Turkey is involved, then it's going to be bad news.
Yeah.
But there's also this document by Rand Corporation in 2019 extending Russia, where it's talking about the same things. Whether it's Belarus, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Syria, everything that's happening today, that document talks about it like it's a game of risk.
Uh-huh.
And that's what's leading us to ask these questions from our guests. And my mental state right now, and I think most Armenians, is we're like this person whose family has been murdered,
Hmm.
and he's like, and the killer is walking free, and he's trying to like investigate how this happened, who killed my family. And it's very difficult from an Armenian perspective because Armenia is a small country, so we don't have the resources of a New York Times, for instance, to investigate journalistically in a comprehensive way. Okay, well, what was the NATO ISR role exactly? And it benefited, it certainly in this 2019 Rand Corporation report, it said that they're going to exploit tensions in the South Caucasus. Did they actually approve this? Did Biden approve this? Or was this just something that Turkey said, okay, well, I'm going to do this and no one can do anything? But then some of the things that happened, like for instance, that the first hour, all the air defenses in a precise targeting got destroyed, tells us that it was something that was out of the ordinary because, for
Yeah.
instance, Azerbaijan tried to attack Armenia in 2016, nothing. And now all of a sudden Turkey is involved and we're seeing this. Anyway, when we're investigating this, when we're investigating the NATO capabilities and trying to rule out or confirm how involved NATO, United States government were in this operation in the 2020 war.
I don't think it's so much NATO. I
Okay.
would steer clear looking at NATO. I'd look specifically at the United States and Turkey.
And Israel, of course, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that intelligence sharing, look, Turkey's in a position that it can bargain for intelligence from Israel. Israel wants certain things out of Turkey, and Turkey will say, okay, this is what we need from you. And they could even task Israel to get certain intelligence from the United States, knowing that the United States would give it to Israel and not give it to Turkey, but then require Israel to pass it on to Turkey.
Right.
So I wouldn't look at this though as NATO. I'd say this is strictly U.S., Turkey, and Israel. That triad right there.
Yeah.
And because Turkey again is pursuing what it sees as in its national interest, and that's what makes this whole region so volatile, so dangerous.
I think that we could also probably include UK, but then we're expanding, but I think that United States essentially has the majority of the satellites and the drones and everything.
Yeah, U.S. has the intel assets. Britain is a raggedy-assed old poodle. Okay, they're like some nasty little dog, needs a haircut, has an annoying bark, and but is elderly too. Yeah, they don't have satellite assets. They're entirely dependent on the United States for ISR. And they have no military force to speak of. They are a terribly meddlesome intelligence or outfit. They have great capability on that front, and they have some stellar intelligence officers. And we've seen them over the years, like people like Alistair Crook. You look at Alistair; he's not a formidable guy physically, but mentally, man is a Superman.
The next question that we wanted to ask you is Karen Kutkowski was with us last week, and we wanted to know what the Trump administration is going to do in terms of this global Russia versus West war. And she said that she believes that the Trump administration will cut financing to Ukraine, but she also cautioned that the US deep state, which is more powerful than Trump, will be able to divert savings from Ukraine elsewhere, and it will still be a confrontation on a global scale. So just because, let's say, Ukraine will be frozen, there will be conflicts elsewhere. What are your thoughts about those concerns?
I think Trump, on the one hand, he's better equipped to deal with the deep state now than he was in 2016. That's for sure. He was naive, didn't have a clue what he was doing back then. On the other hand, unfortunately, he is surrounding himself with potential, the people that have been nominated for national security posts in his administration are just as bad as the Tony Blinkens, Jake Sullivans that currently populate the Biden administration. So, ideologically, they're really no different. Trump's, but we've seen before where Trump had, he appointed John Bolton and Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So yeah, he made terrible appointments, and was able to work around those people to pursue his ambitions. So if I think Trump is enough of a narcissist in terms of wanting to have a great presidency and be well remembered, that he's going to be disinclined to expand the war in Russia, because I don't see Russia and Putin insulting Trump the way Trudeau did yesterday. I mean, Trudeau's a moron. He goes over there and kisses is kissing ass to Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and then comes back up to Canada and trashes him. Trump remembers that stuff. And that's why you don't see Vladimir Putin come out trash talking Trump at all. In fact, whatever he says, oh, no, he's a remarkable man. He's a strong man. Putin knows how to play Trump. He just, you got to put enough butter on his ass that he'll be sliding wherever you want him to slide.
Of course, Trump insulted both Mexico and Canada quite a bit. Didn't he say basically they should be the 51st and 52nd states?
And
because we're bankrolling them to the tune of what, 300 billion and a couple of $100 billion.
Yeah, he's playing from a position of strength, because everything he's saying is true.
Yeah, I think he called Trudeau the governor of Canada.
When he doubled down. Yeah, when they met before, he said, "Hey, well, you should become the 51st state." And then yesterday, or the day before, Trump then came back and said, "Yeah, oh yeah, hey, Governor Trudeau, deliberately trolling." So in those positions with both Mexico and Canada, the United States can flex a lot of muscle there, because they are ultimately dependent on us. Like it or not, but he's got to play a different game with China and Russia. And I said, Putin, at least when you watch Putin's public comments with respect to Trump, Putin's no dummy. The man is just an extraordinary politician who understands, the international arena. Trump may not, Putin certainly does.
Yeah, I think we're done with our questions, but any parting thoughts or any parting advice to us about what's going on in our region?
I would carefully watch what transpires now. If Turkey gets control of what's going on in Syria, then I'd be nervous. But to the extent that Turkey remains distracted both with Syria and with Ukraine, then its chances for being more meddlesome, I think, go down.
For a while.
At least, over the short term. But, I think Pashinyan is playing a very dangerous game, sucking up to the United States. Like I said, I describe my country as we're like a serial rapist. You don't want to be on a date. You don't want to be on a dating app with a serial rapist, okay? Or if you do, then you know what you're asking for.
The fact is that they're doing that, but the painful part is they're not capable of leading, that, or even walking the walk. Because, for instance, they had this meeting with the EU and the United States on April 4th in Brussels, I believe. And it was leaked that the topic of that discussion was how to get food to Armenia in case there is a conflict with Russia. And the Secretary of the National Security Council in Armenia said, well, Armenia is 90%, 99% like, a wheat country. We eat bread a lot, like just like in the Middle East. And he's saying, well, we should just try to pivot to rice. And, you can understand that if Armenia invested in rice fields, or if it had a channel to get rice already, you say, okay, well, I'm less concerned now. But there's zero forethought in terms of, okay, well, how are we going to get, let's say, cut all this wheat and get rice so that people don't starve.
It's Jake Sullivan's way of saying you let them eat cake.
Yeah, let them eat rice. And unfortunately, it's not even those plans. There's no way for us to see if they're able to implement those plans. And
Yeah.
this is what makes people a little bit more nervous.
Yeah, well, the only plan that really is afoot is to figure out how to destabilize Russia, and to that extent, Armenia is just a stepping stone on that path.
All right. Let's leave it there for today. Thank you very much, Larry Johnson, for joining us today.
Thank you, Asbed and Hovik. It was a pleasure. I appreciate the honor to be considered someone worth talking to.
Thank you very much. We feel privileged to have you on our show, and we hope to stay in touch with you.
All right, please do. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
That's our show today. This episode was recorded on December 12, 2024. We've been talking with Mr. Larry C. Johnson, who is a former intelligence officer and expert on issues related to terrorism, national security, and foreign policy. As a CIA analyst in the 80s, Johnson was engaged in issues related to terrorism and security. He then worked at the U.S. State Department's Counterterrorism Office. Johnson has since worked as a political consultant and commentator on issues related to terrorism and security. He's known for his critical views on U.S. foreign policy and intelligence practices.
Folks, don't forget that you can support us, like and share our shows with your friends. And if you're up for it, why not even support us on Patreon? Podcast.groong.org/donate will get you all the information you need to donate to us in various different ways.
I'm Asbed Bedrossian.
And I'm Hovik Manucharyan.
Please find us on social media and follow us everywhere you get your Armenian news. The links are going to be in the show notes on podcast.groong.org/episode number. Thank you in advance.
Goodbye.